But there is one they fear. In their tongue, he is Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
Holy shit! What is this? Forged in God's very flames. Do mine eyes tell me lies? A new Elder Scrolls game.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 1A of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite animations. So this is something that I've wanted to do for a while. Way back in the day I used to be a really bad Flash animator, but as a result of that experiment I learned that there's things you can discover in a Flash project. And I figured what better great start to this side series than one of the most celebrated animators on the internet, Partridge, a notable frame-by-frame animator who has amassed multi-million views on some of his Skyrim cartoons. And I figured since this is typically a gaming channel, we'll be focusing on those videos in particular. And without wasting any more time, let's get going. So earlier I said Harry is a frame-by-frame animator, and what do I mean by that? Well, to explain, you're gonna have to know what this is. And I promise you, this won't take long at all, and it won't be too complicated either. But what you're looking at is a timeline, and every single box you see here is one frame, or just one drawing. And so while many animators have developed new techniques to make animation a lot more simple, drawing a new picture almost every single frame is similar to how Disney used to do its animated movies. Now doing this takes a ton of work. Partridge has actually done the math in one of his own cartoons, explaining that 1 minute of animation for him is 1,440 frames, and just about half of those frames are 700 individual drawings. And again, if you're not an animator, to give yourself a little bit of perspective there, imagine coming up with one really nice looking drawing. You shaded it, the lines are clean, and the proportions look great. You did a good job. Now imagine doing that 699 more times so that you can have 1 minute of fluid animation. Now again, this is just one part of what makes Partridge stand out amongst the rest. Many animators do a more practical way of animating called tweening, or motion tween.
Well, this one isn't so bad. I mean, motion tweens!
Ew! I feel all practical and cost-effective!
Now what makes motion tweening so much easier? Well, for one thing, you can get a lot more animation from just drawing one object. As you can see here from the Starbarians April Fool's Day cartoon, Partridge demonstrates tweening to you, and even here he still puts a lot of work into it. You can see how many individual objects there are here. Not everyone puts this amount of effort into having this amount of movable parts on a character model, but as we start to make certain layers disappear, you can see where the joints connect and what on the character can move independently from one another. And when you make the animated puppet as complex as Harry did here, you can see there's a ton of layers that go into making it look great. But what Harry managed to save himself on time here is moving the character's limbs from one position to another. See, instead of having to draw his hand slowly moving up into a certain spot, he can now designate a spot for that hand to move to, and the program makes up those frames for him. But again, that's not what Harry's mostly known for. He's willing to draw it frame by frame so that he can have a more immersive and believable world. The drawback to that, though, is that you put in a ton of work for just a short amount of time.
What? No, I don't.
Like, look at this one little scene from the Dovahkids cartoon. There are several looping animations for several kids, each with their own individual frames. And in the end, you get this beautiful shot of them walking down a path that only lasts a couple seconds.
Laughter and fun in the Northland of Skyrim, saving Tamriel with cool dragon run.
Yeah, and then Rorschach goes, "I'm nutty!" And everyone thought I was really funny.
Now, a moment ago, I mentioned something called layers. If you've ever seen my Super Nintendo episodes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. 2D media, whether it be video games or animation, oftentimes use layers, which is just stacking one drawing on top of another to give it a sense of depth, but also at the same time saving animators from doing something like redrawing a background over and over again. Now, every animator is going to be different. Some use way more layers, some use very little layers, but here with Partridge, we got ourselves 14 layers in this one scene. And that's not accounting for all the objects you can click into, but not to overcomplicate things for you, just want to show you what each individual layer on this one scene does, and it becomes very apparent what layers are where and why they're there when you start removing them. Like for example, the tables are part of the background, yes and no, but certain parts of the table have to cover up the characters, so there's one layer completely dedicated to that, and of course at the very bottom is the background itself. Because why would you want the actual background to ever be in front of a character? Therefore, the priority is to set it to the bottom. Now, with a Partridge cartoon, it gets a little more complicated. You have a layer for the food, you have a layer for the hand in front of the food, you have a layer for the character models themselves, you have a layer for the booth seat for the lady so that it covers up her back. It just keeps going on and on. It's crazy. it can get pretty complex when you're dedicated to your craft.
And everyone thought I was really funny.
Alright, now that everyone should know how layers work, let's start finding some stuff. So if you're one of the very few people who actually look at the credits of anything that you watch, you'll notice that Harry isn't a one-man show. His backgrounds are done by someone named Joyce, which fun little fact happens to be his girlfriend.
I'll settle down, find myself an elf, mademoiselle! You're a chick in real life, right?
Yes.
And that information's actually relevant. The reason for this is because Joyce would sometimes be playful with Harry while in production. While removing the character layers from the Skyrim cartoon, you can see in the background of the Fable area as a secret message. She was able to place that there because she knew that the horse was going to be in that position well beforehand. And to remind you guys how cool this is, if you're one of the 22 million views on this cartoon, you now know that this message has been there the entire time, right behind Harry and the horse. Also in that same cartoon, if we remove Harry and the computer from the foreground layer, you can see that Joyce added some stains on the bed, which I don't think I have to tell you, she seems to have a crude sense of humor. Also in the Dova Kids cartoon, there's a background that's largely unseen by the viewer. If we remove the kids, you can see that the couch is fully illustrated, as well as a weird artifact that Harry left behind in production. Unfortunately, there's no significance to this weird orange dot, but once again, if you were to watch this on Newgrounds, this orange dot does exist in the background in the final published video. And before we move on to a different category of hidden secrets, I want to show you two more things that involve layers. One of which being the Nord over here, who has 3 different layers for his hair, which means that if you remove one of those layers that contains his hair, it kind of looks like the Nord is wearing a wig. And also in the Song of Skyrim cartoon is this background here that's multi-layered, which is kind of neat because when you remove the top layer of trees, you can see the colors outside of the lines of the main background. Next up is what we're going to be able to find outside of the stage, or as I always like to put it, outside of the boundaries. Now you might already notice by just watching this episode that there's been a little black outline around a certain part of the project. This black outline represents the stage, and everything inside that box is what you're going to see in the final product. But with Flash animation, you're allowed to draw outside the lines all you want. And as a result, breaking the boundaries of a Flash animation can leave behind a couple of interesting things. Like right here, you'll see arrows pointing at certain objects and labeling them. This is because Harry has someone helping with the coloring, and so what he's doing here is making sure there's no ambiguity as to what this object is on the character so that it's colored correctly. You could find this in many instances in his cartoons, and if you were able to get a hold of the original SWF files that were uploaded to something like Newgrounds, these little notes would remain. Also because of stage platforms, artists are allowed to leave things that are dirty and rough outside of the boundaries, and so backgrounds like this one here can have brush strokes outside the boundaries that the viewer was never meant to see. But one pretty amazing Easter egg that was meant for Harry alone is this picture of Sonic Chew. At the time, Sonic Chew was getting the attention of Joyce and Harry, which is even evidenced in the cartoon itself with a license plate in the background of the final cartoon. But also during this mountain scene, Joyce drew Sonic Chew to once again get a laugh out of Harry. Also, while Harry is really good about not having too much outside the boundaries as far as his character models go, there are a few instances where he overdrew some things outside the boundaries. Like this one scene here in the Skyrim cartoon, you can see line arts for an uncolored arm that he knew wasn't going to make it into the final build, so he just never chose to color it. But there's also supposed to be a computer desk in the way that covers up a lot of his body as well. And now the last place we're going to look for secrets and new discoveries is the library. The library of a Flash project holds all the objects that you're going to put into your project. And the best thing about a library is that a lot of things that an animator doesn't use in their project can commonly get left behind here. And Harry Partridge left all sorts of fun stuff. Like for instance, there's raw recordings of some of the lines done in this cartoon that I can play for you now.
Yeah, it doesn't really show anything though, it's just some old guy doing a voiceover. Yeah, it doesn't really show anything though, it's just some old guy doing a voiceover.
What, they're doing a new one? Really? Jesus, I love the last 2. Oh, I'm going to watch that when I get home. Oh, I can't wait to watch that when I get home now. Oh man, I'm excited now.
There's also a boatload of rough sketches, like this one here with Harry on the horse that's on top of a cliff, which must have been a scrapped idea because in the final cartoon, Harry jumps off the horse and starts climbing the cliff himself.
The adventure of my life in the land of Skyrim!
There's also a sketch of the path that the Dova Kids walked down that eventually got used in the finished animation. But way more interesting than that is a picture of the Dova Kids that seems to be unused here. If you pay close attention, you can see that a lot of these kids were redesigned in the final cartoon. I reached out to Harry to see exactly why this was here, and he said it was a concept illustration that he used to show Bethesda, since Song of Skyrim and Dova Kids were commissions from them, and the reason for all these redesigns is to make them even more Skyrim accurate. Also a fun little fact, in the Dova Kids cartoon there's a scene with a dragon wall behind them that has lots of dragon language symbols on it. And if you were to translate it, it would say something like the Starbarians are on their way, which was in reference to Starbarians 2. But funny enough, the next project that Harry Partridge is working on is Starbarians 3. And I thought it'd be a really great idea to show you a teaser of that upcoming episode. So with Harry's permission, let's take a look.
Has the ship's core recharged? Not yet, Lord Necros.
Sire, our sensors indicate a distress signal has left the planet. We should expect company.
Let them come.
So first of all, an enormous thank you to Harry Partridge for giving me this opportunity. Easily one of my top picks to do something like this with, and I'm glad it was him. And of course, if you made it to the end of the video and you never seen any of this guy's cartoons, make sure you do. I got links to everything down below. Or if you came over from Harry Partridge himself, I'm usually a video game channel, and I do something just like this, only with 3D and 2D video games. So if you want to start off with a Bethesda game, I do have Fallout 4 already available. And if you like video games in general, I just did a Super Mario Galaxy episode. But I better address this right now because I know I'm going to get a ton of crap in the comments section. Yes, next week I will do a Skyrim episode of Boundary Break. I know it seems a bit silly to have covered the cartoons of it first, but this is more about Harry Partridge anyway. Also, big thank you to Clay Burton for making the talking animation for the She Says mascot. Couldn't have done it without you, man. Thank you, and I really appreciate that. Oh, also, if you like this side series, let me know what other animators you want to see me cover. Already got my sights set on a couple others, but you can always let me know who you want to see the most. So folks, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Take care.